Okay, so we'll continue. Thank you for that. Does anyone want to read out there? You want to read out? You want to read it out? Oh. Not necessary. You don't have to read it out, but I hope you. Is anyone willing to read it out? Fun? Yeah? You do it? No. You're bouncing up and down, but you're excited you have something to say. Anyone? 2 people did in the last class. And what was really interesting was they read it out. Yes? You read that, please. Using it, I want to understand. It can be very personal, right? And I hope. What about those of us like to read this out now? Everybody else has read theirs out. Are you agree? Right. Everyone else has had their turn reading theirs out, so we're just waiting on you now. So if you can read those now. Yeah? No, no one has read it now. I'm not going to force you. Okay, but it was for you all to see, it's funny and not what you, I don't know what you thought about it, but when I wrote mine, I'm on the wrong page, sorry. Here's what I wrote in the last class. I was a bit disturbed how all my thinking was actually at least on the right topic. It wasn't what I thought would be regret about how my daughter doing okay at school. The kind of things that go through your mind, there are so many. But that's the point, in a way. Even though I thought of those things while I was writing and I was trying to just write what was in my head, there was still time to edit in between the thought and coming out in the word. And so the task of getting to unmediated reality is impossible. Not impossible, but very difficult. You can't just stick your head in your heart and spill it out onto the stage. As the Rolling Stones sang. It's only rock and roll. But they were the surrealists. They were using language games like this to try and get to that reality. So I want to do another language game with you this time. It's a bit more about, so that writing game, automatic writing, is very individual, right? And each person wrote something that's for themselves. But how, and you try in this automatic writing exercise, the point should be, for the surrealists anyway, was to try and see what's really in the mind, not edit it. Of course it was edited. But that was for individual. But what about for a group? So they have another game that they played. It was called Exquisite Corpse. I'll write that down, I guess. And it is an updated version of it today. It's a way to find, of a group, I'm getting you into groups, to find out what your collective idea of the devil is, or the monster, let's say. Let's not make it Christian, right? The monster. What is not our individual idea of a monster, because we each have an individual idea, maybe, you can imagine one, just like that. But what is it when it's collective? And the way in which the surrealists, one of the games that they came up with, and there were many, was this thing called a split corpse. And I don't know, you might have already played this when you were children or at school. You get a piece of paper, say your group is 4 people, let's say, try and get into groups of 6. Okay? So you fold your paper in 6. You fold it in 4 like this. Okay? And then on the seams, you've got to imagine this will be a monster. And someone is going to do the head, and then do the neck up, and fold it over. So you just see the next person sees the neck. And then the person after that will not see that, we'll just see the place for the body to continue to the top of the legs. And so the last person will do the feet. And then we will have a collective monster. Just a bit of fun. Okay, you two, and then two at the back will join into one group. So maybe you'll have to move. Can you two at the back? You two join together in one group, okay? You're not allowed to see what the first person does. And that's the point. The first person does it, does the head, and then folds it over and passes it to you. You don't let anyone see. You do the body, then fold it over, pass it to the next person. They do the here, and then pass it to the final person who does the legs. Okay, so take a page and follow this. You are here. You two, and you 1, 2, 3, 4. You can do more than one. If your group wants to do a couple, you can. So another person can start. Instead of one person being So this is how the paper is. See, I folded it. First fold will be the head. Next fold will be the body, top body, and that part of the body, and the last fold will be the legs. Monster! Go. See, the head is the neck. You can make it smaller. The neck can be narrow. Don't show the other one, you have to keep your secret. Person number 1, don't get the other secret. Okay, let me go down. Keep it secret. Don't let the other see this. Okay, so that's going on. No, it's not interesting for the film, but we'll stop then. Quick, 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 quick! Don't take too long. Anyone finish? Okay. Okay. The monsters are not that scary, I must say. They look quite smiley and friendly. Any more? Yeah, okay. What do you think monster is? Okay, this is the last one. You know, I have to give a report to the faculty about this. Not really. This game can be used for writing as well. And in fact, a lazy group called the Lectures International They, in fact, wrote whole books using this method. They would get a group of people, maybe this many people, and each person would write one paragraph of the story. So they'd have a rough idea what was happening, but the person who wrote the first paragraph, the person who wrote the second paragraph did not know what the person who wrote the first paragraph, just the last word, or the last two words or something. And so he went through and they produced books, and you could read them and they made sense. Because they were from the same social group, but they were kind of collective. Very antro that one because of the wings. Fantastic. Because I'm making a video of the lecture, I'll show them too. Voila. Voila. And voila. I think the first one didn't show up properly. Okay. So surrealism wasn't just all games, but the idea was to find in these games. Oh, there's one more. Excellent. Take the rest of the last time. Also very good. I like the ones that a couple of you did one where there was heads in the wrong place. That's also okay. In fact, the head in the stomach is a part of what they were thinking because their embodiment for them, for the idea of Asefa, which is a society without a head. They wanted to get rid of the king, get rid of God, get rid of nature, right? Get rid of God, get rid of the king, get rid of the leader. The head, very European idea. And so once the body was the focus, then the body was the main sensory apparatus. So they kept on putting, I'm sure you've seen the picture of the hand and eye. There in fact was a movie 5 years ago or something called Labyrinth, which used that image. A monster with a hand, with eyes in their hand, or eyes in their belly, or something like that. Monsters Inc. University uses that idea too. But they did lots of things, these language games and these exercises to try and break from the control of bourgeois conservative life. Try and free their minds from grammar, from logic. Nietzsche had said, and the Thai quotes this, if you believe in grammar, you still believe in God. And their idea was to get rid of any kind of control. But as we saw with the automatic writing, you still have control. There's always control. Even in the unconscious. In fact, for Freud, the unconscious is the control. No, you don't escape that. But there's other dimension, Bataille's other dimension, where what to do with the surface is really something for us. And how to turn that surface into play, into creativity, into art, into joy, and not into war or ego or destruction. Is, yes, the whole question. Right, so Bataille was also a librarian and a surrealist artist and an anthropologist, also a friend and a communist fighting against racism in Europe. And he dragged the surrealists into the anti-racist and anti-colonial movement. He was one of those that supported the line of what you need inside the French Communist Party, to pay attention to Indochina, right? To pay attention to colonialism, and also in Algeria. Leary especially was fighting for the rights of the Outremer, the outvoted possessions of France for independence, already in 1925. Very, very early. And then, of course, they fought against fascism. Fascism, right? The Nazis. You think yet? I think it's fascism. The German war movement, Hitler was coming. And so the time was fighting against that. And he was best friends as well with Walter Benjamin, the great critic of the Paris of the 19th century, of the Arcades project. And he did Benjamin's work, the Arcades in the Bibliothèque Nationale, as Benjamin tried, because he was a German Jew, tried to leave Europe and get to America, but he left it too late. Because of a Bethlehem, I suppose, in Marseille. He left it too late, crossing the border from France into Spain, and the Spanish were on the side of Germany because they started right the fascist war in 36. They put up a border restriction. Benjamin goes to the border, he'd been told they couldn't really cross it, but the border authorities said, no, the border is closed, and he took an overdose of morphine and died. Unfortunately, they opened the border again the next day. So a very big tragedy. His grave is in Portugal, in the Pyrenees, in Spain. You can visit it. And Michael Taussig's third previous book is called Walter Benjamin's Grave, where he goes to visit the grave and writes a very interesting, moving book on Walter Benjamin. But Michel Leary, I want to say a little bit about him before we go, because he was a part of this secret society called the Asifal. So where is the book with the book here? That picture of the Asifal in front? See this? Oh, thank you. So this is a picture by Masson, André Masson, and the idea here is the body has cut off its head and is holding the knife still, and holding a flame of intelligence that it will put into its body. Right? And I don't know the symbolism of skull and tentacles, but Masson produced many copies of this particular piece of work. And there's others in here you can see. It doesn't matter, there are others. Here is that same figure, but this time he's got 1 foot on the volcano, 1 foot in the clouds. Because we are walking on earth and walking on imagination or something. Anyway, they were trying to find this alternative for after civilization had been destroyed in Europe and it looked threatened again. They were looking for alternatives. The Asafala went the wrong way. And this is the danger of playing games if you don't get serious. They say, well, we need to really be committed as a group to our group. And the only way to do that is through a ritual that makes it sure that you belong to the group. So you and you and you, we are going to make a group, and to make sure we will never separate, we will make together a human sacrifice. And they wanted to make a human sacrifice to solidify the group. And Michel Leary, the author of this, who had gone on field work, he's gone a bit crazy, he volunteered to be the sacrifice. He said, you should kill me. I want to have that experience. Crazy. They went to the forest. 1939, they went to the forest, and there's a tree that had been hit by lightning, So the top of the tree was cut off, and around that tree they chanted something like that, and they were going to kill the river. They chickened out, but afterwards they realized actually this became quite conservative, quite right-wing, quite crazy. This was not freedom. This was decadent as well. So they kind of stopped that. That journal ended, that project ended, and they went to fight the conventional the resistance against the Germans. France lost. The war was saved by Russia and America, and that was the story. But Louis went on to write Phantom Afrique was published, but he was already published, but he went on to write. Instead of writing more anthropology, he wrote more and more autobiography. And his autobiographical works are about French middle-class bourgeois life, but very detailed, to the point where it's like ethnographic, where he describes the rituals of French, what it is to go and have a satisfying chicken. He made an ethnography of anything, and he wrote it in a beautiful and interesting way. Manhood, Broken Branches, a series of books over the next 30 years that are quite amazing. Autoethnography, we call it. Yes, this is him quite older. All right, I'm not going to get into... This is from Carrie Clanton's discussion of Phantom Afrique. Carrie Clanton is the reading for this week about hunting for ghosts using electronic equipment. My idea previously was that we would try and do that in Vietnam, but having read the Honeycomb book, I think maybe it's too much for me to understand. I will put these up in the on the Google Classroom on the screen. But one thing in this book is fantastic diary ethnography. What's very interesting is you see the process of him changing from a French man who thought, oh, what a great idea to go to Africa. It must be very interesting. They are so different and so exotic, to realizing that, oh, they are really much like human beings. They live here longer than they know more about their culture than I can find out. And he feels very guilty using so much money to buy everything. He's just collecting for the museum. Let me buy that mask, that door for your hut. And putting them on trucks to send back to France. And so he even worries about buying the clothes off the back of the so-called informants. Now, I've just been reading his book about a French expedition up the Mekong. Very, very similar to this. The last days of the Mekong. And the French drive to explore that belong to that old colonial mentality. Well, we'll see in future weeks that ego, explorer mentality still exists in this movie. But the diaries are often more revealing because you can see the fetish, you can see the contradictions. Whereas the worked up book, like Argonauts of the Western Pacific, the finished ethnography, the science version, It makes sense, it's factual, coherent, it fits together well as a story, but it doesn't feel as human as the diary. The diaries of the anthropologists seem like full of contradiction, like life. So here he ended up like retiring in the library. And he died 30 years ago. So he lived a lot longer. He's quite an impressive anthropologist. I was going to say something about Walter Benjamin, but I think I'm going to run out of time. Okay. Just quickly on Walter Benjamin. You'll come across Walter Benjamin in other courses of mine, maybe you already did them. Walter Benjamin worked on so many things at the same time. He is not an anthropologist, but it's interesting. What's the difference? He does all the same things as Picard and Clary. Works on art, works on literature, wants to explain what he sees, but instead of going to Africa or to Spain, he is in Paris. Just because Paris is the center of civilization, it's not anthropology in those days. Now we would call it anthropology. His project, I mean, he wrote on the street and art and Proust's memory, like Tassi, and on Paul Klee, especially his painting of the Angelus Novalis. This is a painting of an angel. It's a painting by Paul Klee of an angel that's flying backwards, flapping its wings because there's the wind of civilization blowing at it. And it's trying to fly, but it can only barely just stay in place. And what it can see is the piles and piles of rubbish created by civilization, piling up in front of them, creating this wind, this inferno. Kind of tragic image for the idea of the observer of society. But then he spends 20 years walking around Paris, observing and writing. This was ethnography. And he even had a term for this called flannery. Flannery means you're in the city, walking through the arcades, past the shops, you're just walking along, talking with your friends. Oh, look at this. Look at this. This one. Oh, yeah, this is even more interesting. Yeah, just kind of wandering through culture and writing about that. So it's also very honest and interesting. And he focuses a lot on the storyteller. How do you turn that wandering through the city into a story that describes what is really going on in the city? So I want to put some Walter Benjamin onto the Google Classroom for you to read as well. And finally, Siegfried Kracauer. Siegfried Kracauer is Walter Benjamin's model. Siegfried Kracauer is the one he describes as the one who picks up the leftover bits of civilization and holds them up to the light to examine them while the rest of society is falling. Okay, thank you very much. These guys, Walter Benjamin, Michel Leray, and Bataille, and everybody else I've mentioned so far, Gillen, Spencer, Morgan, Tyler, Fraser, Malinowski, Keep them in mind because the assessment for this course will revolve around these figures. We'll talk about this more in the coming weeks, but I'm going to ask you for the midterm and the final to choose one of these figures. Choose Bataille, choose Leary, choose Malinowski, and read very deeply into their work. Yes, I want you to read around as well, everything else, and think of all the issues, but to really get to know at least one of these authors. So if there's someone in these early lectures you think, wow, that one's interesting, keep it in mind. Someone later on in week 7 might be more interesting for you. But I hope there are women coming up as well, of course. But you could write about their wives. That would be fantastic. There's not much material, but there are some. And there's even one I'm going to try and do a lecture as well as in Vietnam. Kathleen Goff. Yeah, very interesting diary. That's one. All right, thank you very much. That's all for today, and see you next week. Okay, finished now. How do I stop this? Okay, bye. Bye all.